Well, the key thing, because I work with the Godfather of Harlem,
Yes,
and it's
exactly.
based on true events.
Yes.
In the Godfather of Harlem, we really do the autobiography of Malcolm X. We've actually devoted more time to doing that than any other cinematic production ever. Okay, Malcolm X has been in something like about 12 episodes. Also, no, 22 episodes when it's over. 22 or 23 episodes of this piece. And my fighting there is to keep what I call African integrity and historical authenticity, which is not easy. Okay.
Exactly.
But it has gotten easy because the writers are both black and white, 50%. But they come from
on Godfather of Harlem. On Godfather of Harlem.
But they come from the industry's protocols. So here comes this guy from a Black Studies, Black nationalist background, who knows nothing about writing, but want to see images on the screen that reflect African integrity, and reflect the historical authenticity that I think it should. But it's fiction. It's like, how do we take Malcolm X? How do we take Adam Powell? How do we take Bumpy Johnson and create a fictional story about a gangster who partners with civil rights and human rights leaders to get control of Harlem from the white operators of Harlem? How do you tell that fictional story using these historical characters and some historical events? And sitting, most of my work is done, even though I go in studio every day, my work is done with the writers in the writers workshop before it gets to a director, before it gets to the big boys to say, okay, this is cool. And so that's where we get a chance to say, this is what the dialogue is going to look like. This is what the scene is going to look like. This is what's going to be in that room. This is what the costume is going to look like. This is what the attitude is going to be, etc. And so when I'm watching this piece, having spent so much time in Togo, Benin, and Ghana over the last 3 decades, I'm there. I mean, I'm transformed out of that theater. I'm in that palace in Dahomey where I've been multiple times. And I'm feeling the spirit of the Agojie. Because I've heard them talk about it so often. They lecture to us when we go there. The king even engaged in the lecture with us so that we begin to appreciate the history. It is not a myth that there was a woman army or women brigades that was a part of the greater Dahomey army. It wasn't a complete woman army. They had men too. But the women's brigade, the men made up the infantry. The women made up the battle soldiers. And they were fierce. And they do little demonstrations for you when you go to visit, and you begin to appreciate this. And I'm watching and it goes. And I've also studied, like you, many of the rebellions and the resistance on the ground in Africa before we got on the slave ship. Many of the wars, many of the jihads to try and stop the slave trade, which had been going on for 1,500 years plus before 1492. So we had been at war for a long time against this thing. I've been to places where we saw part of the resistance up in northern Ghana and other areas where the people build houses without windows, if you can imagine that, right? And the fence around the house is 10 foot tall. The housing compound is 10 foot tall, but the gateway to get in the house is 2 feet tall. So you got to get on your knees to crawl into the courtyard. So an enemy would lose his head trying to come down, you understand? But that was the defensive mechanism that our people put in place. They had the windows on the roofs. The roofs open up so that they could get sunlight and air. And they just had slit in the walls to use their arrows. So we resisted. So the phenomena that is being portrayed is not abnormal nor unusual. The unusual thing is that there is an army that have a significant female presence leading it. And in this story, the story is about an extraordinary female general who would become king.
Right. The woman king. Yep.
The woman king. And so the storyline itself of how they trained and the dignity that's required and the discipline that's required and the sacrifices that's required of these women. You can't get married. You can't have children. You have to devote yourself to this because this is your devotion to saving the kingdom of Dahomey, protecting the kingdom of Dahomey, and protecting our king, but not just the king. And Viola, in the dialogue, they take it to another level when she's talking to the king. He says, we're not just going to stop slavery in Dahomey. We're going to stop slavery throughout Africa. You know?
Right.
It's not just going to be our people we're fighting for. We're going to fight for any people. If this wasn't real history, I would want it to be.
Exactly.
Okay? We've watched Wonder Woman. When I was a child, I loved Wonder Woman when I was a child.
The Amazons. Yep.
All right. We watched Supergirl. You know what I'm saying? They were fictitious stories about white women heroes that was saving the white community. That's cool. Now we got this massive black group of heroines saving the black community. Psychologically in your head, something is being planted that you didn't come into this without a fight. And our women, we live in a society that marginalizes women across the board, but particularly marginalize African women, both historically and currently. And to see a piece that raised African women to the level they deserve to be on, because historically they were those women. That's not a myth. There was the female army, and they were one of the best in West Africa. That's not a myth. You had females in the Egyptian army. That's not a myth. You had females, Amanatu, who led the Northern Nigerian army against the Islamic incursion. That's not a myth. You had a female warrior who led the Moorish army against the Abbasid invasion into North Africa in the 800s. That's not a myth. But we have more data and information on Dahomey than we have on any of those other spaces. And the writers and the director have put together a piece showing what could have been, maybe was to some degree, on the part of the women who represent that element of society that was involved in the military defense of their nation and the projecting and protecting of their culture and their race. And it was just done beautifully. I went in thinking I was going to be critical, mean, and hard. I came out of there crying like a baby. I go like, damn. This just took it off. Just took it out.
Exactly. And there was so much African culture, so many references to history.
Talking about Ifa. You saw the shrines. Those shrines were authentically done. The altars were authentically done. I saw multiple deities on the altars, you know. And let me just up with some deities, like the king. When the king sits on the throne, he doesn't sit like, say, Brother Imhotep is made king of Chicago. Well, when he's talking to me and you in the living room, he's Brother Imhotep. But when he sits on the throne, he is the ancestors of all of us, speaking for those ancestors to us and carrying out of the will of the ancestors for us. So that's the role of a king in Africa. Not a despot that's trying to be rich and wealthy, but that's not the African story. The king has no wealth in Africa. In the African traditional sense, he's taken care of by the community. He has no need desires because they take care of his need desires. But his responsibility is to interpret the ancestral will and wisdom to his community, both as priest and as jurist, because he's the head of the court in the community. That's the king in Africa, male or female.
Yeah, you know, a lot of our understanding of the term king comes from a European perspective.
Yes.
Not from an African cultural perspective, because I saw a lot of comments saying, oh, it's the woman king. They're trying to emasculate the men and things like this. And I saw the movie. That's not the case. Go ahead.
That don't happen. Matter of fact, in the movie, the men is helping to train the women. In the
Right.
movie, the men is fighting beside them as the lead musketeers that opens the way for those warriors to come in to play.
Right.
So, and all through the movie, you see that partnership between the general who leads the women and the king who she and those women serve. And I saw nothing emasculating or demeaning at all. I saw a partnership that simply told a fictitious presentation of a reality. There's a reality of those women warriors. There was a reality of that army being made up of warriors who were women, and that they were considered by history, both white and blacks, writing at that time, as being one of the most fierce army in the field. The only thing that stopped them was the gun technology of Europe.
Greetings. Welcome to the 2022 Black Solidarity Cooperative Conference hosted by Prepared Nations. We're looking to bring an all-virtual conference to you this year with different cooperative action happening around the African diaspora. This is a theme conference, and the theme is I versus we, how to repair a nation. Around the theme, we're looking to offer an education around travel around the African diaspora, how to fund your cooperative, and also how to get into a collective versus an individual mindset of working together. This conference will be hosted on Saturday, October the 8th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we're looking for a $5 to $20 suggested donation, but no donation is required to come in. Please come out and support us on this day as we bring together different cooperatives and collectives with education. And we hope to see you at the 2022 Cooperative Solidarity Conference with Prepared Nations.
Hello, African History Network family. You've put it off for way too long. Now it's time to act for your family, your future, and the next generation. Get life insurance for that peace of mind and security for you and your loved ones. Build your financial foundations starting today. Your independent agent at Fortified Trust Life Brokers, with over a dozen strong A-rated life insurance companies to offer you the life protection you need when it comes to final expense, term life, whole life, mortgage protection, annuities, and more. They're currently licensed in Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. Don't let a pre-existing health condition hinder you from getting life insurance. You can get the affordable coverage you need today. Life insurance is only the beginning. Email them at Fortified Trust Life for a free fact sheet explaining the 5 basic building blocks for a strong financial foundation. It's their gift to you to help you fortify your future. Email them at fortifytl828@yahoo.com or call them at 706-339-5096 and leave a message. Fortify your future today.
IDO Network International, in collaboration with STL Black Woman, DACA, and ACTA, present the Royal Pilgrimage to the Americas, August 24th through the 28th. The African kings and queens are coming to you for business, networking, and sharing of Pan-African ideals. The venue will be the illustrious En Garde Arts Hotel in St. Louis, Missouri. A royal cultural experience and exhibitions, trade and investment opportunities in Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas. A Royal Pan-African Summit hosting keynote speakers, and a red carpet banquet. Come and witness an African royal coronation ceremony. Register at www.idonetwork.org to book your ticket to wine and dine with African royalty. Vendor opportunities available. Get face-to-face with the royals who own the land and resources for business. Contact DACA for deal room information at 602-730-4572.